Welcome in to the I-80 Boys podcast. I am one of the co-hosts, Chris Vaca, and this fine-looking young gentleman to my left is...
That'd be old C. Hunt.
Nice,
Hunt, as they call me in certain parts of the world there. So,
and why is that, Christian?
well, Chris, I don't like to get into personal matters there too much, but I think it's because I love hunting in the sea. We're just going to put it that way.
Okay, good to know.
Better than calling me the old sea otter, as it were.
That's true. That's true. Well, Christian, how the hell are you doing, my man? What's going on this
Chris,
kind of crappy ass Saturday outside?
Well, not too much. Just sitting back, enjoying a little bit of what was the wrap up of spring. I believe there's some colleges that are playing a spring game today. Nobody major, anybody worth covering, I don't think. But I mean, we're pretty much on the other side of everything now, right? And we're just waiting for the last little bits of the transfer portal to kind of close up and see where everybody goes. But I think for right now, most of the hay is already in the barn, and we're going to start looking forward to the fall. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, no, it's going good, man. I am excited. I know I said a couple weeks ago I'll be happy when the whole transfer portal thing is done, so we kind of know what set rosters are. And, for the future here, we'll be doing some upcoming videos on season predictions, which I'm super excited about. A lot of moving pieces this offseason. Going to be an interesting offseason build-up, talks of teams, records, what we think is going to happen, 14-team playoff this year. Or is it 12-team? Sorry, 12-team playoff.
Well,
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, one loss, two lost teams can get in this year. So that'll be kind of cool. So it's going to be a fun off season, but a couple more months, man, we'll get there to week 1. So.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, let's take a look here. The first thing on the agenda today, the Colorado media circus continues. Now, for those that don't know, Colorado and Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders have been making some waves this week because they've been getting in some Twitter feuds with former players. I believe most notably there was a wide receiver / defensive back whose name was Xavier Smith, who was at Colorado last year when Deion got there. He got pretty upset, apparently, because Deion didn't get to know him and decided to tell him to jump in the portal and made it very difficult on him, and he just didn't like the way that was handled, so he decided to transfer to Austin Peay. Played last year at Austin Peay, I guess had a pretty good season as a defensive back for them, and then now is transferring to UTEP, who's Chris's team will have the pleasure of going up against to start the year off. But he was asked in an interview, I guess, and he just said he spoke his true mind on it, said he didn't like how he was basically cut from that team, didn't like how it was handled. He said Deion just was very tough on him. He said it was just overall not a great experience. That was what it was. I don't think it was anything over the top shocking, right? A lot of people, a lot of coaches have had similar criticisms, I feel like, starting a new program, as it were. And nothing normally comes back out of that. There's not really a back and forth. But then Deion, what started it was Shedeur actually made the comment, I don't remember that guy. Sounds pretty mid, if I'm being honest. Then some of the old Austin Peay teammates and the coach got involved and started clapping back. Then Deion got involved at Twitter and started chirping in about it. And so just a whole 3-ring circus out there. Chris, what's your thoughts?
It's a bad look if I'm a Colorado fan. I mean, if I'm a Buffaloes fan, for example, or even a player on that team, I don't need my head coach or my starting quarterback, Heisman candidate quarterback, talking shit back and forth on Twitter. I guess to me, it just looks very immature. I've said this before. I said it last year. This has become a reality TV show over at Colorado. It really has. Nothing wrong with standing up for your program, or your dad, for example, if Shedeur Sanders is doing that, I get it. But there's no need to get into this whole Twitter beef. I mean, most of us probably know what was going on. This has been already televised a couple times. If anybody follows Facebook or any sort of social media, this has been out there the last couple of days. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's really petty. Honestly, I mean, there's a lot of kids, Christian, at any program that don't make it on, maybe, didn't vibe with the coach as well and they leave, and it's not a big deal. It is what it is. It's not every team's a perfect fit for everybody. So just Colorado on a whole, though, man. Like I said, I've said it before. Deion Sanders. I just don't believe he's a head coach, and I think this kind of proves it. You don't see Kirby Smart doing this. You don't see Matt Rule out there doing this. You don't see James Franklin. You don't see any of these elite level coaches out there sitting here, being talked about and discussed, and their players are going back and forth. I just don't like it. I don't think it's a good look. They should be focusing on trying to win more than 4 games this year, personally, Christian. I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts, as you did a good job explaining kind of what was going on here, but what's your personal thoughts on this as well?
My personal thoughts on this, Chris, is that I remember last year a documentary came out about Urban Meyer and the Florida Gators and that whole program. It was talking about the national championships that they won with Tim Tebow and a lot of those guys that were there. And there was a quote in there where somebody said, if you were a star at the University of Florida, or even just on an Urban Meyer-led team, you could do whatever you wanted. You got to eat steak and lobster. You got to fly first class. You got to miss class. You got to do whatever you wanted to do. And it was all good. You were Urban's guy. You were treated like royalty. But if you weren't contributing, you weren't an active part of that team, you weren't contributing to what the outcome of the game was on Saturdays, you were eating beans and weenies, you were sitting at the back of the bus, nothing was guaranteed for you. Now, I understand that's most collegiate programs, if we're being honest here, right? Most collegiate programs operate within that window. But I started thinking about it, and I think with Colorado, if your last name isn't Sanders or Hunter or even McLean, right, Cormani McLean, then it didn't matter. Doesn't matter. Colorado in the last 2 years has lost over 120 players in 2 years, right? In a 2-year time period to the transfer portal. So to me, that is, you got to have some consistency in college football in order to be able to win now. And that is what Colorado is doing this year, right? Because this is going to be the last time we see Shedeur and Shiloh Sanders play on the same team. This is going to be the last time that we see Travis Hunter play on the same team as these guys, right? And for a lot of these people, I wouldn't be shocked if this is the last season Deion coaches at Colorado. Now, I know he put something out already in regards to he's not going to follow his sons, but what coach in the country is going to tell you what they're going to do a year from now? Nobody does that, right? So everybody's locked in for right now. I think Colorado is in a position where they're very strategic about what they do and how they do things. They understand in today's day and age, obviously, that the more likes, the more clicks, the more attention you can get on your program, the more you can generate headlines, the more people are talking about you, the more you're going to be in the spotlight. And the more you can start to, like a WWE wrestling style heel, as it were, you can start to build yourself up, and that'll help with recruiting and getting guys that are talented, that maybe have character issues, whatever have you, to come to your program. Now, I'm not saying Shedeur or Travis or any of those people have character issues, right? But, I mean, let's look at Cormani McLean. I think even his high school coach right now is kind of bashing on him a little bit. So I think for me, that's really what it looks like. I think Colorado, especially even in the Big 12, it is an easier conference. But let's be honest, the Big 12 still has good teams over there too, Chris.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, though. I mean, if we're talking about right now, which is what they should be focused on, it's improving on last season, right? I mean, they came out the gate hot, right? We remember the TCU game. It was great for Colorado. They were 20-point underdogs. They ended up winning that game. It was great. Fine. They turn around. They beat Nebraska, a below-average Nebraska team, and then they beat Colorado State in overtime, which kind of shocked some people that game was even close. And then they kind of got into the heart of the schedule. If we don't remember, the Big 12, the Pac-12 last year was really good. They had a lot of good teams in there, a lot of good defensive teams, believe it or not. And Colorado didn't end up winning shit till, I think they beat like maybe Arizona State after that and ended up with 4 wins. And here they are this year. Yeah, you're in the Big 12. I think that will help them. But like you said, there are some really good teams in the Big 12. There's Kansas, K-State, Oklahoma State. They bring back a lot of players. Utah will be good under Kyle Whittingham. It doesn't matter what Utah does. They play tough every single year, especially defensively. It's going to be a challenge this year for Colorado. And I didn't like the fact that they lost Dylan Edwards. We hadn't talked about that a lot. That was the running back they had last year. Little dude, he transferred over to K-State. He had some things to say about Dion in the program as well when he left a couple weeks ago. I think that's a big loss. And like you said, you talked about the amount of players that they have lost. It is unbelievable to me. The one thing I really knock Deion Sanders for is he doesn't recruit high school kids. I think they got 4 guys recruited out of high school. You can't live in the transfer portal trying to restock your team every year. Now, Florida State did that last year with some players, and it worked out. It was Keon Coleman. I can't think of the tight end was from South Carolina. He was pretty good. But they had an established really good defense with Verse and all those other guys. Hunter had been there for a while, with Travis Hunter, whatever the hell his name is, their quarterback that got hurt. Jordan Travis there. Sorry, excuse me, getting the guys mixed around there. But I just don't think that's conducive to winning. I don't think that's good. You got to get some guys there established at a program, build them up through their freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever have you years to be able to sustain a good program. And I like Deion. I don't really know what he's doing. I think this is a 2-year plan. I came on and said that last year. I know you kind of agree with me. His kids are going to be leaving this year. And like I said, I'm not saying Colorado is going to be terrible this year. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're not going to win the Big 12. I'll be the first one to say it. But I don't see Deion being there after this year. And Colorado is going to probably be about right where they were a couple years ago, where they're going to have to start over. So going to be interesting to see what happens this year with Colorado. Christian, I'm sure you got some to add to that as well.
100% I agree. Colorado at this point has lost 41 players to the portal right last year, and they've taken back in 37. Now again, Deion did say, well, look at who we've lost, right? Implying that a lot of the people that we lost were backups, right? And I think some of those guys contributed. I mean, the Edwards kid, he was a starter for them last year. I think some players on defense, which I know their defense wasn't that great last year, right? They were terrible, to be fair.
I don't know any other way to put it.
But looking at some of the guys that they're getting, it's Vanderbilt, Charlotte, Cincinnati, UConn, Vanderbilt again. This is, again, we're just looking at this. They're going to be better this year just because they're in a worse conference. But it's hard to replicate and to have to replace all. I mean, again, what is that? Half of your roster basically year in and year out. I know the year prior they took 81 players, so that was a lot more crazy, obviously, from the portal. But yeah, Chris, in today's day and age, yes, you do have to be able to go into the portal. You do have to be able to replace a lot. And we're going to talk about another team that also has been gutted by the portal, as it were, here in a little bit. But yeah, Chris, I mean, for me, I look at Colorado and I say to myself, hey, at some point this has to stop. You can't just live in the recruiting portal.
No.
Right? You can't just live in the transfer portal. You can't just live off taking 5 or 6 guys in a recruiting class that are really high-rated guys. Right? You have to be able to keep these kids. And like you said, there was the whole issue with Cormani McClain. He kind of had his own back and forth. Deion, I think, jumped in and said, I think he actually didn't handle that too bad. He didn't go into all the detail about Cormani McClain as he could have, right? As I'm sure he could have.
Yeah,
I mean, there's reports, and I think this has been fueled by a lot of the team, his former teammates at Colorado, coming out saying he was hiding in the bathroom during practice. He was late frequently to meetings. He skipped class. I mean, there was a lot of other things of that nature that the young man was doing, allegedly, right? Allegedly. And to me, I look at that as, I'm not going to blame the coaching staff. I'm not going to blame the culture at Colorado for that, right? We talk about the NFL sometimes, and we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers with Mike Tomlin. Look at how many times a Le'Veon Bell or an Antonio Brown were there, right? And they were cancerous to certain teams and just not good. But Mike Tomlin's ability to be able to manage that at the professional level is uncanny, because really didn't get out. I'm sure there was so much stuff that could have gotten out to the media that never did, but he was able to rein those guys in, and I think that's something that Deion has to be able to do, right? I understand Deion as a player what made him such a great player, what made him such a iconic player was his ability to talk trash, and he was a great player. He's kind of taking that a little bit into the coaching side of it. I don't know if we should expect anything different than kind of when he was a player. It's just different now that he's a coach, right? We look at it a lot differently. So to me, I don't know. I think Deion is going to have to transition into being more of that disciplinarian, more of that traditional coach in the long term for him to be successful at this level of college football.
No, I agree with 100% of what you said. Like I said, my biggest thing with Deion is I truly don't believe he's really a head coach. I mean, he's a great motivator. He's great at speaking. He's great at putting cameras on him and his team and building guys up. And he's a polarizing figure. But as far as X's and O's go, I don't know even about managing a team. I mean, just with the circus that's going on there, no other coach has this going on. You don't hear, anybody else doing this at their programs. And that's kind of what's disconcerting to me. It just looks like you're trying to get your kids out there more. You got your kids clapping back at people. I mean, to me, it's like you need to be focused on the name on the front of the jersey instead of the one on the back. And that's just what I've seen so far with Colorado there. Again, this is a team that won 4 games last year. I don't think you should be chirping or talking any shit, to be honest with you.
You're exactly right. Keeping your head down, right? To me, again, next year, let's say he does stay at Colorado, his sons and probably Travis Hunter are all going to be going for the NFL. Can he have a quiet off season? Right? Can they have a quiet off season? And honestly, I don't know. Right? I think Deion looks for guys that are a little bit more like him in that nature, where they like to talk a little bit of smack. Right? When Deion was playing, and obviously growing up, social media wasn't a thing. I mean, of course, it wasn't a thing back then, but. So we didn't get to see much of it. We got to see a lot of it, obviously, once he started going to the combine and the NFL and he got into the NFL, we started to see that personality really shine through. And that's something that as Colorado and as Deion continues in this coaching career, he has to kind of rein it in just a little bit. I'm not saying he has to completely be just, well, it was a tough game, we lost. He doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to be robotic, but he just needs to be just a little less mainstream with this, right?
No, I agree. I agree 100%. And just because you were a great, NFL player, he's a Hall of Famer, be considered maybe the best DB ever, doesn't mean you're going to be a great coach. You know what I mean? Big difference between playing and coaching. And I think he's kind of starting to figure that out a little bit too. Like I said, it'll be interesting. Like I said, time's going to tell what Colorado this year will be super exciting for them just because they do have some, like I said, I like Shedeur Sanders. I mean, this guy's got a chance to win a Heisman. He's going to put up big numbers again this year without a doubt. I have no doubt in my mind that they'll put up good numbers offensively, and we know what Travis Hunter can do. He's probably the best athlete in college football, to be honest with you. The way his ability to play both ways. I think he's actually a better DB than he is receiver. And I think the NFL will end up taking him pretty high just because of that. So, like I said, they do have a couple players that are really great. It's just going to be the big thing is, you win as a team, you lose as a team. That's going to be determined on their record and how far they go this year.
100% agree with you, Chris. Right there. You drop in the comment section. What are your thoughts on Colorado? What do you think they're going to do this year? How do you think Deion and his team has handled everything that has come around this off season? We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
All right, looking ahead here a little bit. Speaking of transfers and a lot of media attention being on it, Alabama, the transfer portal exodus continues. Chris, this is something that is very quiet because if you listen to a lot of the national media that's coming out, Alabama is dominating the transfer portal. Yeah. I think year in, year out since Nick Saban took over back in 2006, 2007 down there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama's had one of the most talented rosters in college football over that period. Now, not necessarily when he took over, but obviously once he got in 3 to 4 years after he got there, Alabama has just been dominating in the sport of college football. And a big portion of that is kind of a joke that we always talk about. If you mess up at Alabama, somebody's waiting right there to take your place. And they're another 5 or 4-star kid that is just as talented, if not better than you. Well, obviously, we know Kalen DeBoer took over this program. He did a great job at Washington. The one knock on DeBoer, though, was his defense. 2 years at Washington, that was the thing that everybody kind of was concerned about. Ranked in the high 90s, even the 100s as far as total defense the last couple years were concerned. So very interesting there, Chris. I'll kick it over to you here.
Yeah. No, you touched on it. That was one thing I wanted to touch about DeBoer. We've talked about him quite a bit this offseason. He's got huge, shoes to fill there. We know that, right? I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum almost this offseason. I don't think it was a bad hire. I don't. I mean, it's tough to follow up Nick Saban. I don't think it really would have mattered who you put in there. But personally, in my opinion, and I may be wrong about this, but I just think the SEC is just a different animal. You hear me talk about it a lot on here in that conference, and just how difficult it is to win in the SEC. With the LSUs, the Georgias, the Tennessees, even when they had a good year, they're not terrible now. They're not great necessarily after last year, but even Kentucky has years where they're tough. They're a tough team. They really are. Ole Miss has been on the rise. LSU is still a very good football team year in, year out. It's tough to win. And I think DeBoer, the big thing, and you mentioned it right there, was finishing 90-something in total defense. And that's a problem. I think in the SEC, you have to have a good defense. I truly do. Look at LSU as a perfect example. LSU had one of the worst defenses last year in the country. They had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. They had probably the second best receiver in the country, and they had like the fifth best receiver in the country on that team. They had to try to outscore everybody, Christian. We watched a lot of LSU football last year. Their defense was pitiful. It's hard to win. They won 9 or 10 games. It's not terrible, but that's kind of what I see. If DeBoer doesn't get some sort of chemistry going defensively with Alabama, and I know it's Alabama, and they've been known for defenses, but that was because of their head coach. Nick Saban was a defensive guy. He's been that way his whole career. Even in the NFL under Belichick, he was that way. I think it's going to be very, very tough. And they're going to have to freaking address that. They're going to have to. I mean, and we'll talk about schedule and stuff later here, but I mean, we said it, right? You got a big game against Wisconsin. What is it, week 3, Christian? I think it is with Alabama. But yeah, the defensive thing is where I'm really worried if I'm Alabama this year.
No, I would 100% agree, Chris. And it's not just, like you said, it's not just the defensive side of the football either. They've lost 40 guys. It's 39, but call it 40 guys to the transfer portal since Nick Saban's left. They lost another 15 or so to the draft and just graduation, things of that nature, undrafted free agents, signings there. So they've lost over 50 players from last year's team. So the depth isn't there. More specifically, if you want to put a pinpoint as to where have they been the most affected at, it would have to be their secondary, I would say, right, Chris? Yeah. Just because they've lost over 14 players from that secondary. Now, they feel like they've upgraded, and I'll be honest with you, they lost some 50 some odd players. They bring in a recruiting class of like 25 guys, but they've only brought in 12 transfers from the transfer portal. And we're looking at this right now. There's a couple of guys in the secondary like Keon Sabb, and then we scroll down here, Damani Jackson from USC, that are talented guys. Again, Washington wasn't without talent last year when they were ranked 96th in the country in total defense either, right? They bring in a guy in LT Overton for their defensive line. I believe Aquil Bertrand, he was a talented kid, I guess, at Texas A&M. Parker Brailsford, another interior offensive lineman there. The thing with Parker Brailsford, and we talk about it, though, is James Brockemeyer, by all accounts, was looking like he might actually start over Parker Brailsford. Parker Brailsford didn't really practice. I guess there was some personal stuff kind of going on, but he was still around the team at that particular point. I don't know exactly what happened there. We're not going to really speak on that. But by all accounts that I've heard, James Brockemeyer had a really good shot of winning that job. It looked like he had a leg up on it, decided to transfer. He's now going to TCU. They get Caden Proctor back, so they're kind of fortifying that offensive line a little more. Again, I'm not worried about Alabama on offense. If there was one side of the ball that I would not worry about for Alabama, it would be offense. I think they are going to be better this year than they were last year. Again, you have to say, I believe in DeBoer's ability to go in and take a guy like Jalen Milroe and be able to get him a little bit better at throwing the football and making some things happen. I'll be interested to see that, but I think they're going to take massive steps back on the defensive side of the football because, again, I watch a lot of what's going on at Alabama and just keep up with a lot of their recruiting and transfer portal updates. and they're really excited about getting a guy from Charlotte, right? They're really excited about bringing in a guy from Wake Forest or a guy from Houston, teams that aren't typically known for having a good defense, right? So I just don't think I can really get behind Dabour and this team's ability to, in year one, losing that many guys, right? That many depth pieces in the SEC where guys go down every week, to be able to keep pace with the Georgia, right? I don't think that, and I know that sounds tough because everyone's going to look at Alabama, Nick Saban, their ability to go, was it 5-1 versus Kirby Smart and Georgia? But I look at it more from the standpoint of Nick Saban's gone. I look at it from the standpoint of this is Washington 2.0 in the SEC, a.k.a. Ole Miss, a.k.a. Texas, a.k.a. Ole Miss, a.k.a. insert whatever high-octane offense you want to put out there.
Oklahoma?
Right? Oklahoma, LSU, for that matter. And they were good teams, but as good as I thought LSU was last year, their defense was terrible. When they played Ole Miss, they got lit up like the 4th of July. I think even Arkansas lit them up on defense. And Arkansas was one of the worst offenses in football last year.
Yeah. No, No, sorry. Go ahead, Christian. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you want to watch an explosive, high-flying game, go watch Arkansas versus Mississippi State last year. I think that was a 7-3 nail-biter there. Soccer games have finished with higher scores and more action.
And that's the thing though. Like I'm going to be the first to say it. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. Maybe some of you guys in the comments do or don't. But I don't think Kalen DeBoer will win an SEC title in his time at Alabama. I don't. I just think that the SEC is getting tougher. I think it's. I don't know how to put this. Like I think that LSU will be competitive again this year. Their defense has definitely got to get better. But Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's got something going at Ole Miss. You know, their offense was really, really good last year. They bring a lot of those people back, Jackson Dart and guys like that. They did lose Judkins, but they're going to be fine, I think. You know, how does Alabama fit into that? You know, last year Alabama was kind of a really weird team, Christian. You remember how they started the season off? Damn near lost to South Florida. Probably should have lost that game. You know, they barely could put up any points. The defense carried them the first half of the season. Just a very weird. Didn't they play Arkansas? Did Arkansas damn near beat Bama last year too? I know we're not comparing years here, but that was a really close game, you know? And Bama did get a lot better. And I still think that was Nick Saban's best coaching job, what he did with that team last year. I truly do. I don't think that Alabama team was near as talented overall as a lot of previous ones that he had. But defense kind of carried him. And I think without Saban being there, and I just seeing what I saw from the 2 years at DeBoer at Washington, I just don't know how well, like you said, that translates over to the SEC. And I think it's going to be tough for Alabama. I do. Now, I don't mean they're going to be in the shitter. I don't think they're going to win 6 games or not make a bowl game or something like that. I think they're going to be good. But to try to keep up with Nick Saban and the records that he kept there and competing for playoff berths and SEC titles, and I just think it's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chris. And there was something you said there that, thinking back to last year, I mean, last year probably was Nick Saban's greatest coaching job, I think, overall for where that roster was at, who they had at quarterback compared to years prior, just what the defense had lost, right, at certain positions. It just felt like, I know going into that season, a lot of Alabama fans were talking about, we're getting back to murder ball. We're going to run the ball, chew the clock, play defense, and the way that season started off versus the way it ended was completely different, and I think Nick Saban did a fantastic job of keeping that team together. And that begs the question, how many coaches in the country could take Alabama's team last year, hold them together, and make a run, a legitimate run, at winning another national title? I know they didn't, obviously. I know they lost to Michigan, who did win the title in what was a really good football game. But
that was an amazing football game.
How many coaches in the country could really realistically do that? Could Dan Lanning do it? Could Kirby Smart do it? Could Dabo Swinney, Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day? Could, dare I say, Kalen DeBoer have done it with last year's team? Because that's the question you have to ask. Because I don't think this Alabama team this year is better than they were last year. Overall. I think the offense might be better, but I think the defense is going to be a lot worse.
No, I agree. I do think with Alabama this year, if they're smart, and I think Caleb DeBoer is a smart guy, I think that with the 2 running backs he's got, I can't think of the one kid, but they got Justin Haynes, who played a little bit last year. They should be able to run the football. And we know what Jalen Milroe can do. We talk about him a lot, his inability to throw the short passes. He does throw a good deep ball, but he's probably the best athlete in the nation as far as quarterbacks go this coming year. That dude is electric back there and extending plays and running. Hopefully they continue that. Like you said, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you on Alabama so far. What you said, I do think that their offense will be decent. I really do. It'll be better than what it was last year, I think, as far as points per game, yards per game goes. But yeah, defensively though, I just don't see them finishing in the top 10 again. I think it's going to be very, very, very tough for Alabama to hold people back this year, especially with the SEC getting better offensively as a whole.
100% agree with you there, Chris. We're going to segue here into just looking at what else is kind of going on around college football right now.
Oh, yeah.
Your old coach, it looks like he's joining the old college football selection committee there. Is that Mike Riley?
Yeah, get that guy out of here. I don't even talk about that, too. That guy was here for a retirement fund. Jesus. Nice guy, but
yeah. We got the number 1 quarterback, number 1 defensive line, and the number 1 O-line in the 2024 class, and finished in the top 8 in the country. Yes, they did. Saturday. Happy Saturday. On a gloomy Saturday here in the Midwest. I don't know what the weather is like down south. One could only imagine. So bowl leaders hope for CBA to help lower number of opt-outs. So collective bargaining agreement, basically this is what they have at the pros. So we look at it. So basically a revenue sharing with college athletes, right, is what they're trying to do. I still don't think this is going to be enough.
No.
I don't think that. Go ahead.
No. Keep going because I know where you're going with this. I'm going to let you go.
No, I don't think it's going to be enough, right? I mean, we're talking about pennies on the dollar here, right? I mean, college football is a $1 billion industry, and one thing I can guarantee you is the NCAA is not going to want to give up their control, their money that they are making. I mean, think about this. It's a business. Every time you turn on a college football game now, 2/3 of it is actually just commercials. That's very strategic, might I add. Everything they're doing, from implementing a 2-minute warning to all of this, is geared towards growing the sport and making more money. The NCAA will come out and say, we're all for it. We're all for it. And I think, me and Chris talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think the NCAA opened this can of worms as far as the NIL and the transfer portal because they realized college football used to be in January, it was done. All the hay was in the barn. You knew what was coming back. Nobody really got excited about college football. A lot of the core fans cared about it and they kept up with their team and the happenings of college football in the offseason. But for the most part, the masses died off, and then about a week or two before the season started, everybody jumped back in. Everybody started gearing back up. Let's go. But now, with the transfer portal in the spring, a lot of people that make decisions have started to realize, hey, we can keep this thing going. We can make even more money because now we got to worry about this former 5-star recruit that got in trouble over here who wants to transfer, that former 4-star recruit who's not going to be starting, this guy who wants to go get the bag at USC, that guy who wants to whatever have you. And it keeps people talking about college football year round. So I think that, again, when we're talking about bowl opt-outs, the only way to really ensure that someone's not going to opt out of a bowl game isn't for an extra $5,000 or $10,000. Rather, it's to make sure, right? It is to make sure that the game that they're playing in actually means something, i.e. expanding the playoffs. Nobody gives a shit about making an extra $10,000 if I'm a star player for UCF playing in the Poinsettia Bowl, right? But you put a college football playoff behind the Poinsettia Bowl, I'm gonna probably want my team to win. obviously, right? That's how you make bowl games more interesting. That's how you get more opt-ins to the bowl games. Make it mean something.
Yeah, I agree with you. You hit the nail on the head. Basically, what I was going to say. I want to see players play, right, Christian? I mean, we remember that Florida State Georgia game last year. What did Florida State have? Maybe 2 starters playing that thing. I mean, that might have been for different reasons, but man, it sucked that there was hardly anybody playing. Ohio State had a couple pieces out against Missouri. Completely different team. No Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson, guys like that. So it just kind of sucks, man. And I'm with you. This is pennies on the dollar. They're going to have to figure something else out. But the more, like I said, as a college football fan, I'm considered a diehard. So is Christian. Probably many of you guys are too. Is yeah, you want to watch your players play. You want to watch everybody compete at the highest level. That's why they expanded part of the playoff. That's part of the reason why. We want to see these guys play. We want to see Michigan's best go against Ohio State's best, or Georgia's best go against Alabama's best every year, or whoever you're matched up again, in a bowl game scenario type of thing. That's why the playoffs getting bigger, and there's people already pushing for a 2014 playoff. So no, I'm with you. I want to see more of it. I want to see, the one thing about the NCAA, man, they're going to keep making money regardless. I mean, it's down to TV deals now. And you just said something funny, which just brought me back. We used to call some games last year, and I swear 4 hours that we're on, 5 hours that we're on doing a game, it seemed like 2 hours of that was commercials. You know what I mean? That's what it seems like. And it's all about money, man. And that's unfortunately where the college game is at these days.
Yep, you're exactly right. It's all about money. I mean, I guess it's always been about money, but the other side of it is when athletes weren't getting paid, then, who cares? Right? Who cares? Here. And drop in the chat. Let's see what you guys think we've got this year. What you're most excited about this offseason as we get it into the season. We would love to hear from you guys, obviously.
Yeah, we got some time here if you guys want to bring up an issue or a topic or what you guys want to talk about, a certain team. We should maybe talk about Christian's favorite team, Georgia.
Kirby Smart.
Odds-on favorite to win the national title this year.
Right, dude. We'll get into that. SEC Media Day. Yeah, the Media Days always are fun. I'm looking forward to the SEC Media Days. I'm looking forward to the Big 12 Media Day. That should be fun with Dion.
That's true. There'll be a lot of people tuned in for that for sure, just because of him alone. I did see this. Yeah, and he deserves to. Yeah, Christian. Right now, before we start talking this topic, I wanted this. This has been a lot of talk about who's the best coach in America since this came out. Do you believe it's Kirby Smart?
100%.
Love it. Same. I was. Didn't think you'd probably say anything different, but
there's only one other coach right now, right? There's only one active head football coach right now, if I'm not mistaken, that has won more than one national title in the college game, and that's what? Dabo Swinney?
Yeah, Dabo Swinney. Goddamn, yeah. Yeah.
And they're going to meet week 1. So
yeah, that's true.
And listen, I think Dabo and Clemson, I think they're in a good spot, but for the ACC, I think they're in a good spot. But on a national stage with an expanded playoff, no.
Yeah, we've talked about a little bit of Clemson so far this offseason and Dabo, and we're going to get more into Clemson, later down the road here. But I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna come on early and say this right now. As far as a betting man here, I'm taking Georgia, and I'm saying by 3 touchdowns in that game already. I know that's early, but I don't see there's any way Clemson plays with Georgia week 1 for sure. I know that wasn't why you were bringing that up, but it is interesting to think that I kind of forgot about that when you mentioned a coach with more than one national title. I had to sit there and think about it, because I kind of forgot about Dabo Swinney, right? Last couple of years have been considered down years for Clemson, right? I think they were 8-4 last year, right, Chris? Or 8-5, something like that, right in that realm. Mm-hmm. That's I'm with you on Clemson in the ACC this year. I think they're going to have to get back up to the top in that thing, by the way. It's been a couple years since they've even won the ACC.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think you got to look at it from the standpoint of, here's the other thing. There's a lot of here's the thing. Coaches, you can put most coaches in college football into one of 2 categories. They're either great recruiters or they're great coaches, right? They get the best out of the talent they have. They can take 2 and 3-star athletes, and they can outperform what they're expected to do. Think
I.e.
of Utah.
Kyle Whittingham.
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. Kyle Whittingham over at Utah does a fantastic job at that. You look at some other coaches. Again,
Stoops, Kentucky. Would you throw him in
Stoops.
there?
Well, yeah, I would throw Stoops in there. Absolutely.
Okay.
Now he's starting to get some more talent because I think Kentucky's starting to invest some more money into that program, which is going to be dangerous for college football. So you got to watch out for that. But then there's other guys. Ryan Day, I would say, would fit into this category, only because. Go ahead.
No, Ryan, not Ryan Day, but Cristobal from Miami, I think recruits really well, right? But not an elite level coach, right?
100%. Where they recruit really well, their programs obviously are going to give them what they need to be successful, but they always. Cristobal is probably the best example of that, I feel like, right? Because he's in the conference he's in. They've out-recruited Florida State, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they have. And you look at the results. I mean, they kind of speak for themselves. He struggled at the on-field production side of things. The only reason why I say Ryan Day, it's really hard to put Ryan Day into this category. I just feel like with what they recruit, there's no way they should lose to a team like Michigan. 3 years in a row.
Yeah, he's so hard for me to categorize. Is he a really good coach? You know what I mean? I don't know with him. He's the one guy that I have a hard time evaluating as a head coach, Christian. Where would you here? I'll give you hypothetically in chat. You guys can answer this too. I'd appreciate it if you would, because I talk to some people about Ryan Day quite often that are Ohio State fans. Christian, where would you rank Ryan Day in coaching right now? Is he number 2? Is he 3? Out of all the head coaches in America, we just established that Kirby Smart is number 1, correct? Who is he up there? We can even do it by tiers. I don't care. But where would you put him in his time at Ohio State?
I mean, I would have to say with active coaches right now, I would say he's top 5.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I would have to say he's top 5. I mean, and that's the thing of what are we going on? Because you look at Dabo Swinney, and we're putting. I mean, again, I don't know if I'm putting Dabo Swinney right now as things sit as number 2, just because he won a couple national championships a couple years ago, right? I mean, if that's the case, then why don't we throw Gus Malzahn in there?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, no, well, I guess you're not wrong.
Because he didn't win a national championship, right, for Auburn, but he got him to one, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, against Oregon, wasn't it? Or who the hell? Not Oregon. Who the hell was that against?
What was it? Florida State.
God damn. Man.
Florida State. So I guess that's the way I look at it. Is I don't know. For me, I look at I would say Ryan Day right now he's a top 5 coach. Just because, I mean, with Nick Saban retiring, there's only 3-4 coaches that have actually won a national championship that are still actively coaching. That's Kirby Smart,
Jimbo Fisher. Well, he was. He's not even a coach anymore. Shit.
Dabo Swinney and Mac Brown.
Jesus, is that it? Yeah, Harbaugh's gone. Wow.
Orgeron is gone.
Orgeron's gone from LSU. Wow.
So, I mean, I would definitely say he's top 5 for sure. Okay. But like I said, what if you flip-flopped him and old James Franklin down at Penn State?
I remember you gave me this question a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, and I'm so torn on that because I don't think James Franklin is a bad coach. I don't. But he also can't beat those 2 teams in Ohio State and Michigan. And I think we would both agree that Ohio State has always had a better roster than Penn State. You know what I mean? They do. I mean, player for player, they have. Now, Penn State has had especially some really great defenses, and they seem to recruit very well in the running back room, but they lack at quarterback play and receiver most times. I agree. Yeah. If you flip-flop and put James Franklin as the head coach of Ohio State and Ryan Day at Penn State, are the records basically the same? Is it the same story? I'm with you. That's a very tough one. I agree with you. That's why I have such a hard time when people bring up Ryan Day. Where do you put him? He could actually just be an average coach, but an elite recruiter.
We're gonna play a game here in a second, but I want to answer this question from Gator Swag. If Billy Napier gets fired, should Florida look at the Utah coach or Ryan Day? I would not say Ryan Day, but I would say Utah, Kyle Whittingham. The last time you guys did that worked out pretty well for you with Urban Meyer. So I would definitely say looking at the Utah coach, giving him those resources that I know Florida would have would be pretty damn good. Again, this can't be the first time someone's thought about poaching him from Utah, though, right? So I would imagine it would have to make the most sense for him. There would have to be an insane amount of money being thrown at him for him to even consider doing that.
Yeah, I would add that I don't think Kyle Whittingham will leave Utah. He's been there for like 20 years. You said it. There's been other programs that have wanted him for a long time. I do believe you want to talk about a guy that gets the most out of very little for the most part is him. You imagine if you gave him a roster full of Ohio State players, he'd have a couple national titles. Bank it. I do. I think Kyle Whittingham is one of the most underrated coaches in America for what he does year in, year out with the program at Utah. I know Utah's not a place most players even want to go for the most part, and he still seems to win games and compete for, at that time was Pac-12 titles. He's got a couple of them, but yeah. Yeah, Ryan Day, tough one to talk about, man. That's a tough one.
Well, don't worry, Chris, because we're about to start a new segment here that I think our fans will like.
What do you got?
It's going to be called Ryan Day or.
Oh man!
Drop in the comments because we'd love to see who you guys are going to pick here, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's start it off. Ryan Day or Billy Napier?
Oh Jesus, Ryan Day all day.
All right. Now, I guess we should preface this with to coach Ohio State, to coach this year's Ohio State team. Because I think this is the way we back our way into figuring out where does Ryan Day really fit into the cultural landscape of things.
Yeah, no, their current roster, I'll still take Ryan Day over Billy Napier. I think Billy Napier's just in over his head. Florida's got talent, man. They just don't win football games.
Yeah, I mean, Jed Fish, I think Daniel was saying that Jed Fish could be a rumored guy there. That just seems like a lot of jumping around, though, right? And I don't know if he's really – to me, Jed Fish is kind of in that Dave Aranda boat where the year he had at Arizona, if he was going to jump, this should have been the year. He's obviously left for Washington. Is that who – he's at Washington
he's
now,
at
right?
Washington, yep.
But Washington's
got some success there, though, right, Christian? I mean, sorry, I apologize to interrupt you. There's a little bit delay between me and you on the show, but do you think that Jed Fish can do some of the things that Kalen DeBoer did at Washington?
Can he? Yes. Will he this year? No.
No,
because
not this year.
Washington has been gutted. They're going to the Big Ten. It's a harder conference. It's going to be very interesting, I think, to this year. No, that's why I'm saying I think all the hype around him is going to probably die off after this year, and then he's going to come back with a vengeance in year 2 or 3. Right.
No, and I think Jed Fish, and I want to get to one of these comments by Scott here. I've been hearing this Lane Kiffin thing to Florida, I swear, a million times now. This has been going back and forth. I mean, I guess I want to ask, and I'll ask the audiences too, but would you take Lane Kiffin where he's at Ole Miss right now? I think he's done a good job of kind of turning that program around, right? I mean, they won 10 games last year. They got a lot of those pieces back this year. Why the hell would he go to Florida? I know the money, they would be, and it's a bigger stage. I get that. But the pressure at Florida is kind of like it is in Nebraska in a way. They've had some really great years back in the 90s and 2000s. I mean, but his name gets floated around everywhere, I swear.
I was going to say Lane Kiffin's name has been attached to every job from Nebraska to Texas to you name it. I mean, he has been attached to that. Like you said, he would be crazy to leave Ole Miss. Ole Miss isn't going to fire him.
No.
I mean, Lane Kiffin's one of the most successful coaches they've had.
I agree.
And they've had some good coaches, but yeah, listen, Ole Miss is going to pay him whatever he wants. I know they pay out the wazoo right now for talent, and that's okay. I'm not knocking that, right? I mean, there was a documentary that came out about Ole Miss and Mississippi State and the bagmen and this, that, the other. They are going to pay. Lane Kiffin is not going to leave Ole Miss for Florida. I know he's one of those guys. I think he's a troll, and I think he just enjoys messing with people and floating his name out there, right? He's like that guy that's fixing to break up with his girlfriend, right? That you're like, oh, he's going to be single next week, and he's never single. They stays together, and then 20 years later, he's still with the same person. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, and I do think I overall on Lane Kiffin, I don't think he's a bad coach either. I don't. I think he's a very smart. You want to talk about a tremendous recruiter, portal and recruiting kids. He's up there. He recruits very, very well. Uses the portal very, very well.
Oh, 100%. Let's get back to the Ryan Day or. I'll go to Gator Swagger. You said Dan Mullen or Ryan Day. That's easy. I'll take it, Ryan Day. Dan Mullen couldn't recruit.
Nah, fuck Dan Mullen. Yeah. Ryan
He could coach, but he can't recruit.
Can't recruit. Yeah, if you don't have players, it makes it tough.
Ryan Day or Kalen DeBoer?
Whew. I gotta go Ryan Day just because of longevity at the Power 5 spot. I mean, 2 years at Washington for DeBoer is not enough for me. Ryan Day's been, how long has he been at Ohio State now? 4 or 5 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah, something like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I gotta stick with that. That's an interesting one though. But I mean, Ryan Day is the much better recruiter. I think we both agree there.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Ryan Day or Dabo Swinney?
Because Dabo just refuses to use the transfer portal. But if you put him on Ohio State's team, I think I'll take Dabo Swinney. I will say one thing about Dabo Swinney. He can coach defense. His defenses are still pretty legit at Clemson. I'm going to take Dabo Swinney. And he's won 2 national titles.
Oh, okay. All right.
What's your answer? You're not getting away without giving me an answer here, Christian.
I would probably still take.
You'd still take Ryan Day?
Yeah, why not? I'll take Ryan Day. Because who was Clemson's competition when Dabo was winning those championships? Now I get it. He did beat Bama, but I mean in the ACC.
You're probably looking at what Florida State was freaking terrible at that point in time, weren't they?
Yeah.
Jesus, who was? No, Clemson won a lot. I mean, Clemson had pretty much a cakewalk to win the ACC then, for the most part during those times.
And that's my thing. I mean, Ohio State in a neutral site game against Georgia in Atlanta was 1 field goal at midnight away from winning the national championship and changing the complete conversation and dictation, I guess you would say, of Ryan Day and our perception of him right now. To use every Stephen A. Smith analogy I can there. But I think that, for me, that's why I would have to lean Ryan Day, just because I think he can recruit, and I know Dabo can recruit, but Ryan Day also believes in the portal.
I agree as far as you make a good point here. This is a tough one because you think about it. In today's game where the transfer portal has become a thing, yeah, Ryan Day kills it over. Yeah, that's I think everybody knows that's Dabo's biggest knock. He refuses to use it, and it's kind of shown in their records the last 2 years. Let's be honest. Clemson only winning 8 games. That's a tough one for me. The only reason why I'm going to lean Dabo is just because he does have 2 national titles. He doesn't have 1; he has 2 with 2 different quarterbacks.
I'll let you throw some my way here, Chris.
Ryan Day or this will be a tough one for you, Dan Lanning. I know Dan Lanning's only had a couple years at Oregon. But you got to love Dan Lanning because you're kind of your boy down there from Georgia. And Dan Lanning recruits incredibly well.
Yeah, give me Dan Lanning.
Okay. All right.
I'll take Dan Lanning just because he can recruit.
Yes,
I believe he's
a hell of a coach.
I believe in year 3 they're going to be even more physical. They definitely can put up offensively. They can still put things up. Oh, yeah. He goes into the portal. Like I said, I like Dan Lanning a little more. He's more of a defensive-minded coach. There's a certain physicality that Ohio State, except for last year, has been lacking, and I think that's why they've struggled in some of the games that the big games they've played. I
will say what Dan Lanning's doing at Oregon is making them an SEC style team finally. You know what I mean? You remember Oregon over the last 10 years has always been really flashy, small, speedy guys. They're fun to watch, but when they always played somebody with a great defense, they got their ass kicked. I think Dan Lanning started. You see what he picks up in the portal: big offensive lineman, physical defensive line. I mean, I love what Dan Lanning's doing. I would agree with that. That's why I brought that one up, because I would take Dan Lanning over Ryan Day. I know he doesn't have near the tenure at the school, but I still think Dan Lanning, when it's all said and done, will have a couple national titles by the time he's done.
100%.
Good. I got one more for you here. Ryan Day or that's a tough one. Pretty much touched on all the elite coaches here. Am I missing anybody? Ryan Day or give me Brian Kelly at LSU. He's had a long time of coaching at Notre Dame and LSU. He's always been the knock. He can't win the big game, right? He gets his ass kicked every time he plays in a big game, but wins 10, 11 games every year.
We're talking about like right now, tomorrow. I have both of them. I could, and I'm taking Ryan Day.
Okay.
But it's close though, because I'm taking Ryan Day just because I think they both can recruit pretty well. They both have done about the same thing you could imagine. They've both made it to national championships, but have lost. I mean, yeah, I think both. That's a very close one. I thought you were going to go with Ryan Day or Steve Sarkisian.
That's actually a decent one because Steve, what he's done, Steve's been in the game a long time. You remember he coached at Washington. Steve Sarkisian, I got to see a little bit more out of him. I would take Ryan Day over Steve Sarkisian still. I know that might be a little bit of a hot take. I know Steve had a great year with Texas last year. I get that. But overall, I mean, you think about it, Steve Sarkisian's been coaching a lot longer at the college level than Ryan Day has. I mean, he had a lot of years at wasn't he at USC too? I think he was for a short stint, if I'm not mistaken, with Steve Sarkisian. I got to lean Ryan Day on that one.
Yep. Okay. And we kind of did Ryan. Well, let's finish it up here. Ryan Day or James Franklin.
Gun to my head. I'm going Ryan Day because he's beaten James Franklin. I just consistently. That's a tough one to me because I do think James Franklin is a good coach. I really do. And I like James Franklin. I do. But what about you, Christian?
Give me James Franklin.
Okay.
Because
why?
Because Franklin can recruit, right? And a lot of that's because of Penn State. He can recruit. I like him as a coach. He just doesn't have the talent to go toe for toe with Michigan, what they've been the last couple years, or Ohio State. But you put James Franklin in that same boat, you give him all the talent, there's really nobody standing in his way. It's just coach versus coach. Like Jim Harbaugh said it best. Our boy Ryan Day was born on third base, meaning all he had to do was just waltz into home, right? Ohio State has the recruiting, they have the history, they have the boosters, they have everything you need to be successful, right? So James Franklin, his ability, his path as a head coach is about as hard as it gets, right? It's as hard as it gets because he had to be at Vanderbilt, and I think he got Vanderbilt a double-digit winning season.
Which is unfucking believable. Wasn't that 2016 when he did that? 2015,
I thought
2015,
it was
2014, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
It's unbelievable that he won that many games at Vanderbilt. Unbelievable. I agree.
So,
but when does that wear off for Penn State fans? Eventually.
Well, you're exactly right because, I mean, you got to look at Ohio State being as good and as dominant and being the factory for just NFL players that they have been. Now, don't get me wrong, Penn State has also put out some guys in the NFL too, but not at the same clip rate as Ohio State.
No.
You look at what Michigan's become, right? Penn State's kind of just this, they're the third best team in the Big Ten. And I look at the end of the Joe Pa era there, right? As they got somebody like James Franklin to come in and be their coach, I think that's really reshaped their program and has kind of gotten them in a position to where they're not middle of the pack anymore, but they're the ones that teams like that are going to be the ones that benefit the most from the expanded playoffs.
Oh, there's a lot of years Penn State would have made it in a 12-team playoff. Absolutely. I would agree that some of those years they might have been the fifth best team in the country. You know what I mean? Because the only two losses were to a really good Michigan team and an Ohio State team. I agree 100%. That's an interesting one, the Ryan Day or the James Franklin. I agree. That's a tough one for me to make.
We'll dust this off probably from time to time. We may switch up the coaches and look at some other coaches too. Gator Swag, I'm starting to get the sense that you are a Florida Gator fan, I think, with some of these names we're throwing out there. Will Muschamp or Ryan Day, Jim McElwain or Ryan Day. Well, considering the fact that two of these guys have been fired, I would probably say Ryan Day.
I like Scott's point the best there, bringing up that Ohio State-Oregon game. That one I have circled on my calendar, man. I can't wait this year for that game. That game will be I truly believe those two teams will be playing in the Big Ten title game this year. And that'll be a big game, huge game, kind of like the Washington-Oregon game last year.
Yeah, and that brings up a really good point, Chris. I think personally, like you said, that we're going to get into some stuff as the offseason wears on a little bit more about how the landscape of the Big Ten is kind of playing out. I think there's tiers right now. If I had to, and I'll answer the Steve Spurrier versus Kirby thing here in a minute, looking at something. But I think the landscape of how this plays out in the Big Ten is really interesting. Right now, gun to my head, I have to pick and put people in tiers. I think it's Ohio State and I would say Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State. They're kind of the top three. And then the next tier, you've got teams like Michigan and
don't you say
Iowa, Nebraska.
I did it. What about Washington? They say, they only lost 21 of 22 starters. They're gonna be tough.
That's the tough side of it. Washington could be a surprise team somehow, but we'll have to see, right? The only reason why I'm throwing Nebraska in there is just because I think the same way that look, Michigan, their defense is going to be good again this year, but offensively, there is a ton of question marks there. Also, Michigan did lose a lot of players.
Yes, they did.
Like on the defense. So it wouldn't shock me if Michigan's defense regressed just a little bit and the offense struggled to move the ball at all. So in the same way I say that, I look at, a team like Nebraska, right, whose defense they were good last year. When they played bigger teams that have actually good offenses, they got exposed. But I think offensively, Nebraska is going to be a lot better this year, and I think defensively, they get a ton of experience back. So,
yes, they do.
Oh, that's right. I forgot USC, right? I totally forgot USC. I'll throw USC up there in that top tier. I know Chris won't probably agree with that, but
nope. I'm gonna jump right in here and interrupt Christian. The only reason I think USC is a terrible football team. No, I don't. Until Lincoln Riley, and he's been coaching for 8-9 years, and I consider Oklahoma as well, gets an effing defense, I'll believe it. Their offense will be elite. They'll put up big numbers. The Miller Moss kid will have a tremendous year. They'll have some really good receivers and a really good running back, and it's all pretty on paper. But until they play some defense, especially in the Big Ten, they're in that third tier for me. They're right there with, I would say, probably behind Penn State, in there with maybe Michigan this year. If he does have a defense, then watch out for USC, because some of those teams under Lincoln Riley, they've had some of the best offenses ever. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm sure you do. We talk about quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray have all been the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. This guy puts out elite level quarterbacks at the next level. So I don't see anything different coming with Miller Moss. You know what I mean? I think this kid will be really, really good too.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think personally USC, as much as they've invested, right, as much as they've invested on the defensive side of the ball, they went out and got, I think his last name is Joseph something or another. Their defensive coordinator from UCLA comes over to USC this year.
Yep.
He did a great job. Last year was his first year at UCLA. I thought their defense was going to fall off the side of a map on the earth last year, but they did a really good job. Like I said, so I actually like their defensive. Yeah, I really liked what he did in 1 year at UCLA, and he's got more talent. I mean, again, USC, they are not talentless. They've done nothing but improve their defense in the offseason. More so, I would make the argument, than the offense. And I think USC is going to be a more balanced team this year. I still think they're going to put up numbers on the offensive side of the ball just because it's a Lincoln Riley-led team. So the one thing I want to see, can they be physical? Can they bring some physicality? Like the biggest question we had about Ohio State for the longest time was, Can they be physical? Can they bring some physicality with them into the Big Ten? So, yeah, for me, just looking at the top tier, and we'll just focus on the top tier teams that I think are in the Big Ten. I think it's Ohio State, USC, Oregon, and Penn State. And then I think everybody else is maybe just a step below them or multiple steps below them.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying there. I like that. I think that, we'll get more into this, but that's kind of a rough outlook. Me and Christian are pretty similar on the Big Ten for sure. So, but yeah, they do have a lot of talent. That's one thing about USC is just unbelievable talent. You take USC's offense and pair them with an Iowa defense. You'd have yourself a really good team there, because you got one that literally can't move the ball up and down the field about 10 yards a game. And you got one that gives up about 500 yards a game on defense. So, yeah.
I'll answer this question, then we'll answer one more after that, and we'll probably end up calling it here. Steve Spurrier or Kirby Smart? Look, dude, I got to go Kirby Smart. Just because Steve Spurrier won one national championship as a head coach at the University of Florida. Don't get me wrong. Even at South Carolina, Steve Spurrier always had Georgia's number. And he always came. He was a great coach, Steve Spurrier was. But Kirby's got 2 national championships. He's kind of got free reign right now over the SEC just because of what all these other teams are doing. It's like I told Chris, the SEC, there's a seismic change getting ready to happen here, right? Where, and I don't know if I necessarily like it, where you look at a lot of the trends of these SEC schools, they're hiring offensive-minded guys that the same question is going to persist. The question that I have for Alabama going forward and that we're going to have to answer is, Alabama can put up points the same way LSU can put up points, the same way Ole Miss can put up points, the same way Texas and Oklahoma can put up points, but they can't stop anybody. You look at Mississippi State, they went out and hired Lane Kiffin 2.0, the Diet Coke version, and Jeff Lebby. He doesn't have the personality of a Lane Kiffin, but he's just as explosive. He comes from that Oklahoma style, that Oklahoma coaching tree, as it were. Right, that air raid offense that they like to run. So he's going to bring that back. Very questionable, I think, in Mississippi State's defense this year, because even their offense will probably not look as explosive in this first year. Why? Because, well, frankly, they are not very good at recruiting. And the guys they brought in the portal weren't necessarily at big-name schools either. So Mississippi State, not going to be very good, but that's a whole other topic for another day. My point of this being, getting back to the Kirby versus Steve Spurrier debate here, is in college football, defense seems to win. Defense seems to win, right? In the NFL, it's more about the offense. In college, think about who ran college football over the last 20 years. Who's a defensive-minded guru? Nick Saban.
Yeah, I'll keep it parked right there. I talk about it all the time. Defense wins championships, man. And, Nick Saban won a lot of them defensively, too, if you guys remember those low-scoring national title games against LSU every year. So, I mean, I'll say that, and I'll say that, I think Kirby's probably, he's next in line. Georgia's got definitely something brewing there, so for sure.
Biggest upsets of week one, or biggest upset in week one. I mean, we're looking at it, and I didn't see this right here.
Mm-hmm. Georgia Tech over Florida State.
Georgia Tech over Florida
That's
State.
Like the first game. That's like the 24th, I think.
And Gator Swag agrees with you there. Yeah, that's probably the one I would have thrown out there. I don't know, just because it's week one, anything can happen. This is a game that I've got circled right here: Texas A&M versus Notre Dame. It's at Texas A&M. I mean, Texas A&M's Notre Dame's gonna be favored in that game, right? Or no? Didn't you say Texas A&M?
Yeah. So this is weird. Yeah, no, you're right. No, A&M is favored by like 2 points right now in most books. This is weird, and a lot of that has to do with them playing at home. But there's a team we haven't talked about a lot. It's Notre Dame. There are a lot of analysts that are uber high on Notre Dame this year. Like, I'm talking top 5, top 10 in almost every poll you look at. Christian just said it. That game I have circled as well. That should be a very, very interesting game. And you're right, A&M is favored, by the way.
Yeah, A&M's favorite. So I guess my upset would probably be Notre Dame over Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M's in a much better spot than they were with Jimbo. But I still think the issue, like to me, and this is the Kirby Smart 2.0 of this conference here is Texas A&M. They're going to be really good on defense. They're probably going to struggle to put up points this year on offense. They're going to regress again on offense, right? I like I said, I believe in Texas A&M's defense. I believe in Mike Elko long term. I just think next year, game one, you got to play Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, he's still got to show me something too. There's a lot of question marks coming into this.
Yeah, no,
but
100% agree with you there.
Yeah, I think on the road, he's had a longer time to obviously get that roster in shape. They've got more talent, which again, that's why I don't understand why this A&M's favored, I guess, but I digress.
Yeah, and that might change. I mean, this is so early out, but they came out with some early lines on some bigger games. And currently it's Texas A&M's favored by 1.5. So pretty much a coin flip.
But yeah, I'm looking at the rest of it. I mean, not too many other. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some upsets, but there's not too many. There's not too many like marquee big games where I could really lean into it.
What about Clemson over Georgia week 1?
Well, it certainly could happen.
Okay, the Dogs are 14-point favorites currently.
It
ain't happening. Christian, quit it. It ain't happening. Stop it.
Well, sir, that game is played in Atlanta, Georgia. So, no.
It could be played in Antarctica in Clemson's backyard. It don't matter, bro. Georgia's winning that game by 20 points.
UTEP beats Nebraska?
No. Don't even get me started. No. Nebraska better go out and win by 30. Seriously. That's my thing there. They want to get the season started off right. Let's go out and dominate week 1. UTEP should score less than 10 points in that game if our defense is as good as everybody says it is. So
LSU versus USC. Now, if I'm not mistaken, LSU also has gone to great lengths to improve their defense as well. So, and I mean, both this LSU, USC, right?
Teams. They're the same team,
right? It's a pick'em.
What if I told you this, that LSU's favored by 6? I'm taking LSU in that game. I am going to bet LSU in that game.
Oh, I'm going to take USC.
Okay, good. Already, this is early season stuff. I love it.
USC neutral field. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's played in Las Vegas.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I don't think it matters. I don't think, I've said it just a minute ago, I don't believe Lincoln Riley wants anything to do with defense. I don't think he gives 2 shits. I think he thinks that he can just outscore everybody, like Scott said, 69-68 in a shootout. And that would have been the score last year if those 2 teams would have played.
I think he realized that. And he said, USC ain't going to keep paying me all this money if I don't figure out a way to put a defense on the field.
Man, I hope you're right. I know that it's every year, though, we've been hearing about that. Ask the Oklahoma man about it. I'm with you. I think LSU, though, I think LSU is the one that can improve their defense. They got to get a lot better. Don't get me wrong. It was pitiful last year under Brian Kelly, but I think LSU wins that game, though, week 1. I just can't. I want to bet USC. I want to stand up for the Big Ten over the SEC. I can't right now. I might change my mind. We got time on this, but I still think that LSU wins that football game. By the way, though, that should be a really good football game, though. More important.
Well, and the other side of it too is the reason why I lean USC in that particular game is I've seen what USC has brought in the portal, and I'm not really a big guy as far as you're replacing half your team in the transfer portal, but I don't know. It's the first game for Nussmeier. I know Miller Moss played in the bowl game. I mean, it is what it is, but like I said, it's basically 2 of the same teams. I like the talent that USC has better. I think they have the better defensive coordinator that's going to be slept on. And I think they're going to be just good enough to beat LSU week 1.
All right. Good. You take that money line then, buddy. You take that LSU money line. Let's we'll find out, though. That's going to change a lot. Like I said, there's 3-4 months until football here starts, but that will be a good game. More importantly, though, for us fans, I'm excited. There is some pretty good matchups here, though, week 1. I'm with you on the Notre Dame A&M game as well.
Let's see. We'll finish it here. Miami versus Florida. Now, who's favored in that one?
That game is not up on the betting on my couple sites, but I am already taking Miami in a heartbeat over Florida. And that's not because I hate Florida. I just think Miami's got better players. And this is kind of a make or break year for Cristobal, in my opinion.
Like you said, make or break year for both of them.
Yep. I'll take Miami.
I'm
going to get on the Miami hype train this year as much as I don't want to. Where's that game at? Where's that one played at? Is it the Swamp? If it's at the Swamp, that is a tough place to play. I will give Florida that.
Take UTEP.
Yeah, of course you will, Swag. That's why you don't make any money.
It's at the Swamp.
It is at the Swamp.
I don't know, man. Give like I said,
that's a coin flip. I like Cam Ward though at Miami. I think he's a better quarterback than your boy Graham Mertz, the Graham Cracker. I still think Miami's got just as much talent, if not more, than Florida. Both coaches are pretty sus, in my opinion, when it comes to coaching. I'm going to take Miami, though. I am. I'm going to take Miami. Call me crazy. Florida probably will be favored in this game, though, since it's at home. I will give them that.
Let me just take a look here. You know what? I'll take Florida.
Okay. Good.
I'll take
start
Florida.
The season off real strong when we get into our keeping record. Me and you will have 5 games we'll be doing week 1 and be all the opposites.
Well, Miami's defense got gutted via the portal.
No, it did. I won't get on Billy Napier in Florida, man. I've seen too much of him to know that big games, he struggles early in the year. They couldn't beat Utah, depleted Utah team week 1 last year. I don't think Florida's defense is that good. I think the offense will be okay, but
don't get me wrong. I don't think Florida's defense is going to be that good either this year, but I just think that in a home game, week 1, both coaches got to have it this year. I mean, to me, the other side of it here is I'm not really thrilled about Miami's receivers either.
I think they'll be all right, man. They got talent down there, man. They always got speedy dudes. I think Cam Ward being a quarterback is a huge upgrade for the Tyler Van Dyke crap they had going on. I like Cam Ward. I think he's a really good quarterback. And I actually, like I said, I truly believe Miami's got a decent running back room too. I'm a little bit, Miami is one of the sleeper teams for me in the ACC this year. That's why I'm talking about them the way I am. But not that I'm a fan of either of these teams, but I just think Miami gets Florida this year. I just do. It should be a really good game though. For week 1, I like the fact that they got a rivalry game right there in state. That's awesome. So like I said, Florida will be favored. I almost guarantee you they'll be favored in this game because they're playing at the Swamp. But as far as betting goes, but I'm gonna lean Miami.
Let's take a look at Auburn versus Alabama A&M.
Is this New Mexico State thing like it was last year?
No, the Auburn should win that game pretty handily. Should.
I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna do this thing where you took Duke over Clemson last year. Everybody thought you were needed to be in a home or something or some special ed place, and you end up being right. Man, a lot of people had to come back on it and tell you that you actually do know college football, Christian. So I'm waiting for that one crazy upset pick that you're gonna come out with. So.
The crazy upset I'm going to come out with this year, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. Wisconsin over Alabama.
Ooh, wait. That's week 3, man. That one will, I don't know if I can take that yet until like I see a little bit, but I do like that game. We talked about that off air a little bit. That should be and that game's at Wisconsin too. So Bama's going to have to go up there and play them. And Wisconsin should be much more improved this year too under Fickle. You know how much I love my boy Luke Fickle. So,
oh yeah, I like I said, my thoughts on our boy. Oh my God, why am I drawing a blank right now?
Mordecai,
Tyler Van Dyke.
Van Dyke, the quarterback.
Van Dyke's one of those guys that it wouldn't shock me if Wisconsin specifically their offense, looked pretty pedestrian in the first 2 games, that they play, which is not against great talent, by the way, either, for Wisconsin. But if he just came out and exploded and had just a really great game against Alabama, because that's Tyler Van Dyke's MO. You'll have a game where you're like, wow, this guy could be an NFL first-round draft pick. He could maybe even compete for the Heisman there, right? And then he'll have a game or two like last year against North Carolina where you're like, what the hell's he doing?
Yeah, looked like he never played football before. Yeah. I'm with you. I hope, though, under Luke Fickell and their offensive coordinator, I can't think of his name. I think he's from like SMU or whatever, but I hopefully they can kind of level it out for him. So it's not so many peaks and valleys with that guy week in and week out. I do think Van Dyke's a talented guy, but boy, last year at Miami was rough. I watched him struggle in a lot of games, and this guy was a 2-year starter there. So it was kind of crazy to see, but yeah, Wisconsin's one of those teams too. Very interesting. We'll talk about them probably in a couple months here too, when we get into deep dives on them, but Wisconsin's the team that I think can do some damage in the Big Ten as well this year.
Yeah, and the only reason why I'm saying that's just because obviously they play Western Michigan and they play South Dakota, so they can be very, very vanilla and still win those games. And then, go ahead. And I'm not saying you want to look ahead, right? But you could look ahead to Alabama if you wanted to. Damn, dude. Wisconsin has a murderer's row of a schedule. I'm just looking at their full schedule. I stopped looking at them after Alabama, but they play at USC. Then it's really not that bad. But then they play Penn State, Iowa, Oregon versus Nebraska, and then Minnesota to end the year off. So they got a pretty tough schedule too.
They do. They do have theirs is like backloaded. They got those 2 tough games. Bama, USC will be tough right there right away. But yeah, Wisconsin's one of those teams though that, like I said, they're kind of like, in a way, kind of like Nebraska for me this year. Like I think they can make some noise this year if things go well. Like I say, I still think Luke Fickell's a good coach and get some shit turned around there and have a better year than they did last year. It was kind of Wisconsin really took a step back on defense last year. That was tough, and they turned the ball over. A lot of drop passes too from those receivers last year too.
Oh yeah, I can't really say they took a step backwards on offense.
No, yeah. Well, they don't have any Braylon Allen this year either, so I don't like. But they've always have a great running back though at Wisconsin. It seems like year in year out, man. Always got some highly touted dude, Jonathan Taylor-esque, running back. So,
oh yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, guys, we come up on an hour and a half on the I-80 Boys College Football Show. I think that's going to just about do it for this Saturday. Again, we hope everybody has a great weekend. Starting next week, we're going to start putting out some more recorded content and doing some of our season predictions. We're going to start our way in the Big 12 with some teams, and we're going to start working our way out from there. As the season ramps up, we'll start talking about more prominent teams and doing our record predictions and such. Chris, any final thoughts?
No, not really. Like I said, appreciate you guys that showed up today. Scott, Gator Swag, Daniel was in here for a while. Like, I appreciate you guys coming in and dropping your info on us. We appreciate that. And like Christian said, stay safe this weekend. Have fun. And yeah, we're going to ramp up to some serious college football talk here shortly. Like I said, we're kind of right around the corner here with the transfer portal closing.
Absolutely. We'll catch everybody next week. Y'all have a great weekend.